Good evening. This is the meeting of the Community Preservation Committee for Wednesday, February 22nd at 7 p.m. We are meeting at the PSAP building on Highland Avenue in Needham in person as well, and we're having a hybrid format as well. We have one member attending virtually, and the members of the public can also attend virtually by logging in to the Zoom address using the passcode and webinar ID that is listed on the posted agenda for this evening's meeting. This meeting, as I mentioned, is being conducted by a hybrid format by Zoom and in person. It is being done pursuant to an emergency order of then Governor Baker, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and determining that Zoom meetings such as this, of which allow the public to attend virtually, satisfy the requirements of the open meeting law. I'm going to begin by having a roll call, which will be our tech check to ensure that people who are members, the one member who is here meeting with us virtually can hear us and we can hear him. And I'll call each member, who few of them are not in attendance. Joe Barnes is absent. Bob Dermody
Here.
Laura Dorfman is also absent. Reg Foster.
Present.
Adina Hannigan.
I don't see her yet. She did tell me she was going to be here.
Okay. And then let's see, Dave Harrow.
Here.
Gene McKnight.
Here.
Rick Zimbo.
Here.
And the chair, Peter Pingator. Present. Okay, staff is here. Cecilia Simchak. All your meeting materials should have been provided to you ahead of time unless otherwise noted. Pursuant to the applicable rules, all votes will be by roll call. We'll follow our usual ground rules. We just want to create a clear transcript that whoever is speaking or asking a question, that person's name is identified on the record. So either I'll call you by name or you can state your name before you speak. We have our agenda in front of us. Let's see, chairman's updates. I do not think I have any at this time. We can, if there are some open questions on other matters that we discussed in prior meetings, we can deal with that at the time. Okay. The CPC financial statement, and that is, let's just deal with that quickly. That is a memo. We're going to refer now to a memo dated February 8th, 2023 from Dave Davis. I'll tell you the broad concept of the memo, which is this. Each year at town meeting, we allocate funds based on anticipated revenues from two sources. The first source being the property tax surcharge, which is 2% with some exemptions of our property taxes collected and anticipated to be collected in that following fiscal year, as well as an anticipated match by the state through the state CPC trust fund. And it is also based on an anticipated amount based on prior years. There's a complicated formula in arriving at that number, but our finance director basically anticipates what the numbers are going to be, the anticipated revenue is going to be for any given year based on prior years. And based on that, we allocate the funds pursuant to the requirements of the statute to three or four key sections. One is the requirement that we have at least 10% of the funds either spent or allocated for future use in each of what we call the restricted funds buckets: community housing, historic resources, and open space. The balance of the funds are essentially provided, are allocated to the general reserve. We also make an allocation for administrative cost each year. So we anticipate, since we have to have at least 10% of the anticipated revenue allocated to each of those restricted funds, in order to hedge, we allocate 11%. And then if there is an unlikely event, like an additional revenue that comes in for that fiscal year that exceeds, based on the calculation, the 11% we contributed, then we come back the next year and we true up. So we've done this in prior couple of years. This year is even a little more unique because apparently immediately before the warrant was printed, or maybe right after the warrant was printed, we got another sum of money, not for just FY 2023, but for FY 2022. So the warrant articles that we're going to do this year to kind of true up our accounts are going to account for additional sums that came in, not just last year for FY 2023, but the year prior to that for FY 2022. The reason I think that we need to have this discussion ahead of time is this, that we've had this policy certainly in 2022 and in 2023, and we'll discuss it for 2024, of basically doubling the amount that we have been putting in allocating to community housing in order to build up that reserve to pay for cash requests, to basically fund by cash requests that we anticipate coming in from the Needham Housing Authority. So I'm bringing this up because this is a new committee, but I'll tell you my view on it, which is we probably want to follow the will of town meeting of 2022 and then committee members in 2022 and allocate additional funds to community housing to ensure that community housing receives 20% for that year. So you'll see that our finance director leaves it up to us because he said, you've already met your minimum requirement of 10% per year for 2022 and 2023 in community housing. It's up to you as a committee to make the determination if you want to do that. And he's proposed that we draft 2 different warrants based on it. He's prepared to put together 2 different resolutions or warrant articles based on our decision for each of those years. One, just not allowing any additional money to community housing, and the other saying, no, we want to be consistent with what we did in 2022 and 2023 and allocate enough funds to cover the full 10% of what our revenues were for that year. So that's in a narrative form is what this detailed memorandum provides. And so we'll have a resolution. I think I don't know that we need to do this now, but I guess we can get a sense of the committee right now. So we can get this off of our docket, which is, seems to me we can probably do it for all fiscal years, 2022, 2023, 2024. We have a sense of the committee that we want to continue with this pattern of funding, giving a kind of a double amount to community housing in order to ensure that there's cash revenue in cash available in a restricted fund for community housing for projects that come in for requesting funds for community housing. So you just kind of get a sense of the committee. If you want me to parse it up on each week, each year I'll do that. Maybe 2024, we don't need to talk about it right now.
Where does the rest of the money go? You got the 10% or 20% into a general fund?
General funds, yeah. Okay, so you'll see, a good way to look at this, Dave, is look at your final, if you look at, I'm going to tell you what we did in the years prior.
So would this be helpful for you?
Yes, thank you. I was about to pull that out. All right, so this is from our immediately prior meeting. And
No, from last year.
last
From town
year.
meeting.
Town
The
meeting,
town
last
report to town meeting.
So what we did was, how this is, if you look at Article 15, we appropriated our anticipated revenues. I'll hand this over to you. And what we did was we doubled the amount. We anticipated 11%, and we put in $109,400 of community housing. And then open space is $404,700 in open space. Historic resources is a little nuanced. We'll discuss that. But there was only $28,050 put into historic resources. And that is because the difference between $404,700 and $28,050 was the amount of the bond obligation that we paid for the renovation of Town Hall. The balance of the anticipated revenues goes into an annual reserve, and that amount was $1.385308. So that's in Article 15. Do you have that online, Dave? Are you looking?
Yeah, I can.
Nice job.
One thing is, that we went from 11% to 22%, not to 20% last year.
Right. And so what we do is, but I think the goal here is just to get to double the amount. And so once we hit, if we hit 10%, that we're just truing up at 10% with the other funds. Now we'll true up at 20% with community housing. We go to, as Reg says, 22% when we're funding unanticipated revenues in order to ensure that we at least reach a level of 20%. Okay. Does that make sense?
I was thinking 22% as well, but now I understand.
Why we do that?
We target 22%, but it will ultimately be 20%, but we've got that 2%.
Hey, a suggestion, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair?
sure.
That Cecilia send that around to the new members who, because you write that so town meeting members can understand it.
Right.
You know, Dave Davidson doesn't quite write it that way, even though it's very thorough
That's a
and very
compliment.
detailed. No,
Okay.
you've struggled with that for a few years, trying to, explain what this is about.
Yeah, I mean, this is just, but I try to use this just as a baby step to understand this kind of way we deal with these anticipated revenues and where it goes.
Does not the 22% come from 2 times 11%? You've always
Yes.
done 11 in all the
Yes.
buckets. Okay, fine.
But the 11% was really just to ensure that we meet 10%. Okay,
Got it.
so we overfund, thinking that there could be some if there's extra money that comes in, we will have it covered. So, okay. So you may want to note, if you're are you looking at the article itself or the report to town meeting of May 2022, Dave?
No, I was just looking at the
The article, because I don't know if it gives you also gives you the balance of the funds as of May 2022. Community housing is 3.2 million, open space is 1.6 million, historic resources 15,000 for that reason that I discussed. The annual reserve is 1.2 and free cash is 2.5. Okay. All right. So that's the concept, and we'll send this out to you. And so I would say we don't need to vote on this now, but the sense of the committee, I assume, would be to follow the kind of will of the prior committees and prior town meeting by funding up to 20% for 2022 and 2023. Is that correct?
Yes.
Anyone disagree with that? Rick, how do you feel about
I just one question. Where is the final warrant being published?
Is that?
That's
Is that
right.
Rick Zamboni?
That's right. He's in a witness protection.
He's got the scrambler. Turn off the scrambler.
Right, can you try that again?
You want to say?
Something's going
We're
on.
not getting a very good
All right, hold on,
connection,
Rick.
Rick.
We're gonna work on this. We're not getting good.
Smooth stylings.
Okay, try again. I muted us somehow.
Can you hear me now?
No, it's you're real crackly.
I wonder if he should log off and log on.
Or maybe we could put them on a laptop instead of the owl for audio only. Like if I join the Zoom. And then you turn the audio.
You
like he
get,
needs to hear us.
Yeah.
back when you have
Yeah.
2 mics, laptop mics, things going.
It was working fine before when we were making small talk.
I know.
I'm not sure why you can't hear me.
Great,
Now we
we can
can.
hear you
Keep
now.
going.
Don't do
Oh.
anything differently.
Okay, I'm not doing anything differently. I'm just, what I was going to do was ask when the town warrant is being published. Because you want to have our language finalized before the town warrant is published, or else we're going to have to amend it on town meeting floor.
Okay, well, do you want, he's given us proposed language in his memo on page 3. And one is consistent with 20% and the other is consistent with 10%. So we could, if we want to, I feel fine with us voting tonight for this to agree to fund and to vote for the resolution as proposed by Dave Davison. It's on the
Yeah,
warrant.
I would recommend doing that just to get it out of the way so it's on the warrant.
Okay, let's do it. Can I have, let's have a motion and to approve the text or the town meeting warrant article to accomplish the resolution of the shortfall and fund the housing reserve at 20% for both years FY 2022 and FY 2023.
So moved.
Second, Dave Herr. Okay. We'll have a roll call vote. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's have a vote. Rick Zimbo,
Yes,
Dave Herr,
Yes.
Rich Wasser,
Yes.
Gene McKnight,
Yes,
Bob Jones,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay. Nicely done, Rick Zimbo.
I will say last year, the warrant closed the day after we had the final vote. So I was sending them updates on April 1st. So us voting on this in advance is great.
Yeah, I
I think we were going back and forth all day.
was drafting updates for the warrant language
Live.
on April 1. Yes.
No fooling.
Okay.
and Mr. Chair, what do we do with respect to fiscal year 24? Do we have to have the same motion on that as well?
Yeah, it's going to be a different motion, but yes, it'll be similar.
Yeah,
to
but
our-
in essence, the same, just a different amount of money.
Well, 2024 will be the comprehensive one, which will deal with the anticipated full revenue amount and then the allocation to each of the reserve accounts and the allocation to the reserve, to
Right.
each of the accounts plus the balance to the reserve. So
Okay.
let's see. I think that we have our estimates here, but I don't see any
Can I
need for
make a
voting on it.
suggestion, which is, as you know, in a few days, I think they start publishing the initial drafts of the warrant.
It's
Yeah,
published.
or it is already published. And
It's already on the website.
what we could do is to say that it's the sense of the board. We only have 2/3 of the board here, I mean, the committee, but the sense of the committee is that go for the 11% again and let them draft the language, you know. We voted for this language here that was in
Yeah.
Davis.
who's them?
Whoever, I guess it's town council does the language. I don't know who does the language. It's the particular article in the warrant. You do.
No,
No.
Dave and
Yeah.
Kate
Yeah.
do a lot of the drafting,
Right.
a lot. So, but it's 11, but 11% is his issue, is what is for the reserve accounts. But you want to say 22%.
That's
for
what I
community
mean.
housing.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, we can have us,
Or we can have a formal vote.
Uniform. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to correct, I'm confused. Did we not just make a motion and vote unanimously about 10%?
okay, so on, well,
Sorry.
that's fine. On 2022 and 2023, because of the extra funding that came in, our account for community housing fell short of an amount equaling 20% of the total revenues received. And so it may have been 15%. And so we voted that we would fund an amount that would bring it up to an amount equaling 20% of total revenues received. For when we deal with anticipated revenues, which is what we'll be voting for FY 2024, so anticipated funds coming in over the next fiscal year, in order to have a good guess that we will reach the minimum, we vote to allocate 11% of anticipated revenues because we always are conservative about the amount of money we might collect. So it routinely, it actually hasn't, it's been happening a lot recently because the funding, we've been getting supplemental funding through budgetary process and things like that. But for a long time, we were hitting it, right? We were.
That's why I'm not familiar with it.
Right, so now what we would be doing is, again, now We cleaned up, we did a true up, we cleaned up our books in 2022 and 2023. Now we're looking forward to 2024. And we're gonna say, okay, let's do 11% for a reserve account. It takes that question really out of our hands. And then let's as a committee agree that 22% is what we would want to fund on community housing. Okay. I think what we'll end up doing though is he'll have a draft warrant article and he's gonna have, if it's up there in a draft form, he's probably gonna give us an option of 1 or 2. If it's not there, if we have a sense of the committee that we want to just have, we've ended our discussion, we want to have 22% and vote on it, we can communicate that to our staff, right? And they could just take care of it and we could vote on the draft warrant article itself and it's similar to what we did tonight. Okay, the next time we meet.
Next time we meet. Okay. So if I ask 11% for the reserve account, 22% for community housing, and what do we do about historical resources and open space?
Okay, so historic resources actually does also get 22%, but the way that the warrant article is set, the warrant is set up.
Yes, but it's a
Town meeting.
borrowing situation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Town meeting actually takes all of that money in an earlier warrant article, the budget, and devotes that money to a payment on the bond that we are obligated to pay with CPA funds for the historic preservation or restoration of town hall. So by the time we, late in the town meeting process, we get to CPA funds, town meeting has already actually taken out the historic funds and paid for the bond.
Was the borrowing for Emery Grover included in that too?
It will be.
It will be.
Will we have bond obligations this year?
I think so. Yeah, it starts this year.
Okay, because we allocated a significant amount of cash. That may not be the case.
Oh, okay. You're right. You're right. That's true.
They may draw down on the cash first. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, and Jean, okay, makes sense.
And for space, open space, the 11%?
Yes,
Yes.
with always a goal that we're going to at least hit 10%. Okay. Okay. All right, so that takes care of our CPA financials discussion. Any other questions or comments? We're okay. Now, let's see, let's go through our application updates. I guess the first one is FY 2024-01. I thought the way we would approach this is get our questions to the representative of the proponent. So we get Regis here on behalf of the Housing Authority and put them in writing ahead of time. I tried to do that. If you have questions about it, we can do that. If you say, all I want are the questions and I will get you the answers, that's.
All I want is hopefully people have had a chance to read the questions. And if there anything missed or any tweaks, to say speak now or forever hold your peace for the next week.
Okay.
We can write the answers here.
So I would ask so that assuming for the moment that this pro forma sources and uses of funds is the document, the kind of final one-page document that was presented to the finance committee. I think this will likely be exhibit A in any discussion.
So it's part of one of the questions too. Is asking
Right.
for that.
So if we can, in terms of that question, if we can actually have, if the pro forma sources and uses of funds compare with what we have.
Last year versus this year.
Yes.
That's the intent. Yeah.
That's it.
It's a spreadsheet.
I understand.
Yeah. So we will do that.
Okay, good. All right. Any other comments? Okay. All right, good. O2. All right, so first of all, I just want to make sure, has everyone has seen the draft questions because the Cambridge Housing Authority took notes, drafted questions, and Reg said, if you have any comments or additions, please let me know. I would like to walk out of here tonight with my questions, so I can just get the work done.
I know the draft questions for the Chambers.
Correct.
02.
Did I flip this around? Is Linda Chambers 01 or 02?
Linden Chambers is 01.
That's what I thought.
Seabeds is 02.
That's what I thought.
But I
It's
think the-
listed
I
here
think
as
the-
02.
Yeah, I
Oh.
believe that these are, so the ones that, the first set of questions in the chart are for O2, are for Seabeds, Cook, and then
That's it.
Well, this-
these are for
So
Linden
everybody is,
Chambers, but these should be 01.
Somebody's looking at you.
Okay, this one, so the one that has the blue line on the top is 02,
Yeah,
and the one that, the other one
is a,
that says Linden Chambers should say 01.
yeah, you should
Correct.
go by the name. not the-
Okay. And then pretty soon, when
There's
we
a
get,
typo that needs to be fixed.
so it's when we get our warrant article, I think we need to start flipping over to article numbers. So then our language is consistent with finance committee's language and select board language, because it really, it's pretty soon,
It starts getting locked in.
it's pretty hard to get it done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Reg, yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
just a
let's-
question, Reg, did you confirm that that was a typo on that question I asked you? With respect to the zoning?
Refresh my memory, which question was
Yeah,
that?
why don't you do it for the benefit of all of us rather than, okay?
Yeah, no, what happened was I was going through the
Oh.
information on the questions, and the one section on zoning, it talked about a zoning decision for calendar year 24, and I thought that was calendar year 23. It was the result of questions that Gene had asked
Wasn't
at that
the,
meeting 2 weeks ago.
It was in the detail questionnaire. That is a typo, yes. So
Okay,
there,
thanks.
you called me a typo. I don't know if I can find it right away, but yes, we'll get that fixed.
It's section 3, number 1, under zoning on that first draft section of questions.
Um,
You talked about the page 6 to 7 that talked about zoning?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been in a whirlwind of paper in the last few days, and I did confirm that, Rick, but I'm sorry that I'm not.
Tonight's packet?
No, it's not. I don't think it's in tonight's packet. It's in.
No,
the
it was
detailed
the packet that was sent out previously.
Yeah, it was in the detailed packet, but I don't think it was 3-1.
That's not the right chart, Cecilia. There it is, right there, stop. Yeah, it's been corrected here. Under 3 zoning, where it says calendar year 2023, it was previously calendar year 2024. So that's fine. Long as it's been corrected and caught, because that was really the thrust of Gene's question at the time, was to make sure if what would happen to the schedule if in fact you weren't getting whatever approvals you needed for zoning before the end of calendar year, how does that impact the project schedule? And that was really where it was going.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, now, so now let's go to FY 2024-02, that's Seabed's Way. So now that's a separate set. Gene, that's on top of your, there you go. That, again, this is a work product put together by Reg or hopefully Cambridge Housing Authority. And this, what they've done is based on the presentation that was made last week and the questions raised during that meeting, put together a list of questions. You'll see, Gene, I think under zoning, that it includes the question that you had for zoning. We folded that in. Okay. And I've reviewed that and I'm satisfied with that. Thank you to whomever on Needham Housing Authority side, whether it's Cambridge Housing Authority or otherwise. Maybe it's took the notes, directed the questions. So those are the follow-up questions and Housing Authority will provide us with answers. Okay, any further statements or any further
I have one
updates?
further statement or update or whatever you want to call it, which is I just want to let everybody know that we are on the agenda. The Needham Housing Authority, but more specifically BH&A, our architect designer team here, for the 28th meeting for both the select board and the planning board in the same evening, even though they're meeting separately.
So this is the February 28th.
February 28th, like next Tuesday. And those members of the select boards will have a pre-read in their packet. And and it's basically, it's designed to be sort of a 20, max 30-minute introduction to the team. And here's what we're planning to do and getting initial input from both boards. And
Select board and.
the planning
Planning
board.
board. Good.
Planning board.
Right.
Yeah, they both wanted. So we'll be running, we'll be doing the select board first, I'm told by Kate, and then Lee says we'll be coming, they've got the timing coordinated between the two meetings. So the planning board second. So if you want to tune into that, it's the same presentation both times. You know, the like slides are the same, but obviously the interest of the two boards will be a bit different. In particular, I think the planning board is going to want to get into a little bit more depth on, ways of getting the zoning done and what is being contemplated and so forth than maybe the planning board would.
Yeah, I just have it on my calendar as planning board meeting at 7 p.m., but I know it's to be one meeting after the other.
Yeah, and then the select board actually starts at 6. So I don't know exactly
That's-
what we're
yeah,
going to be.
An email came in today about it, and I just haven't focused on it yet.
Okay, thanks for that update, Rich.
But it's been mainly going to be focused on the Linden Chambers, and being the main presenter is going to be the leader, they call him principal in charge of the BH&A team.
Will Margaret be there?
Margaret will be there.
Shouldn't go anywhere without. All right, so any other updates?
She was worried about me being here without her tonight.
She was?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, we were asking.
Tell her we were.
She
worried.
appreciated the night off, let's put it that way.
Okay,
Thanks.
all right. So now, any further questions for the Housing Authority with respect to FY 2024-02? Gave us really good questions last week. Okay, good. Now we're going to move on to FY 2024-03, the Fazio Playground. Gee, I don't know that we have much of an update, right? We've looked,
We haven't heard about your trip out there yet.
really?
We did talk about
I thought we did. We did
Okay.
feel, well, one thing that I wanted to clarify was there was a presentation by Susan Welby, who talked about the using a part of the, you weren't here last week. She talked about using maybe up to half of the area that is currently, I guess we call it the top at the Fazio for other purposes, but I think what they're thinking about is potentially putting in a dog run there.
The dogs and tots.
What's that?
The dogs on one side, tots on the other.
It's a little bit, yeah, I can make some comments on that, but I won't. But I think it's something for you and I, Gene, to think about, but one thing I want to tell you is that it's a pretty big parcel. The
Yeah.
chain, that's a big area.
And this committee, they really haven't decided anything yet. So,
Yeah.
everything is just up in the air and talking. But
The concept is, when you go out there and you look at it now, it's this great big fenced-in area with climbing apparatus scattered in various places, really too far away. It should be more
yeah, or I
compact.
think that's what the town is pushing towards. But the unknown is what you do with the rest of the space.
Right.
Yeah.
I had the idea I had the idea that they were simply saying that the rest of the space would become essentially open space. And that just beyond, is the top lot. Isn't there a wetland area, a stream?
Well, I think that you'd want to make the, at least I would advocate for making the open space in the wetland area, that buffer zone, and then pull the tot lot more towards the parking lot. But
That's
that's
that
what-
was my
That
understanding.
seemed, if you
Yeah.
looked at it just as a layperson,
Yeah,
it made complete sense.
but you
Because
know,
it's
they're
much higher up. And then it drops off and it gets really wet.
they're asking money for design, so that would be, you know, part of the design process. And whatever they decide to do with the other part of it, you know, that will determine how that gets configured.
So
I-
I have a question for the committee in a second, just
Yeah.
remind me of the design.
I was just gonna say, I've visited the area, you know, a couple of weeks ago. And from a maintenance point of view, it didn't look that bad, you know, like a lot of stuff is old, but they put new chips down there. The only thing that's there that's really in bad shape is that little building that my kids played on 30 years ago, so.
It's, the gear seems very tired and very.
It is, but it's outdated and all that, but you know, we were beating them up on maintenance, which I think was, we were maybe a little too hard on.
considering the age of the.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
See, I think the other thing, so first I want to, remind me to talk about the question of the estimate for the design plans. But I thought that what made, I think that it became clear to me later, and I'm not sure that the committee fully understands this, is that there are kind of tot like playing areas interspersed in all of the different playgrounds, like a Perry Park. And so there's a little bit of tot lot in most of these neighborhood parks, because we started focusing, at least I did, of like, oh gee, this is the tot lot. This is the only tot lot. It's like, yeah, this is the only tot lot. There's accessible things for tots in all these different playground areas. So I think that kind of, we understood that by the time we finished meeting with Stacy.
Yes, and I want to mention something else you said, because I asked, when families come to this area, there are children of all ages. Why not a tot section and then a section for slightly older children, you know, up to 12 or so? And she said that actually is something we would like to see, but it would be more costly. We're not sure we're going to have the funding for it. It's something to think about later. Now, you know, the idea of a dog park, I'm surprised to hear, because it's so close to wetlands, I would think that a dog park is something we don't want near a wetland. But that's up to the Conservation Commission.
I don't think that's, yeah, it's an idea. Our representative of the Conservation Commission seems to be indicating.
My dog likes wetlands.
That's good.
So
smell.
the question I have for the committee is, do we feel satisfied? I do, because of the amount of money involved. It's a $35,000 request. By the way, they arrived at the estimate is by informal discussion with. There's nothing in writing. These are like phone call inquiries. You're comfortable with that?
Less so.
How much it would cost to have
I mean, I
somebody,
would-
What do you
hire
think?
somebody to do the design?
Maybe you could help me out. What is causing anybody's discomfort?
The informality of it.
Yeah, because if it's more than that, we'll be back for
I think the
more.
numbers.
Well,
You think the number's low?
Based on my experience as a
so
design consultant.
this is where, you know, I think there's an ongoing debate, and I'll just try to say one sentence about, which is to what degree does the committee, this committee, substitute its judgment for that of another committee, Parks and Rec, or the Parks and Rec Department? If they say it's 35, if it was 350,000, I might question that. But if they think it's 35,000, what's the worst that can happen?
But we're not substituting them. We're actually, as part of due diligence, we're saying, well, how did you come up with that estimate? And they said,
Well,
we made
can
a
I
phone
just
call.
finish my sentence and then you took it out? Or you finished it for me, and that was not what I was gonna say. So I think on one hand, they might not have asked enough money. But they're gonna go ahead with it anyway and pay for what the difference out of their own funds. And on the other hand, maybe they asked for too much money based on their judgment, at which point it's supposedly, if they only need to use 25 out of the 35, then the 10 comes back to the town, back to our reserve. If the town manages itself internally the way it manages the Needham Housing Authority. If we estimate something and we can't just take that money and use it for something else. So, $35,000. Maybe the question is who did the informal estimate, but I wouldn't feel the need to have like a RFP go out first and then come back and then have us decide.
But we wouldn't do that. Like with the housing authority, our executive director would call 3 people and could write those down on a piece of paper and tell us that there were 3 different estimates.
Yeah,
Right.
but.
But I mean, I'm only raising this as a question, and I'm not trying to substitute.
I'm not
your judgment.
uncomfortable if that's what
Okay,
you
that's all.
just looking for.
Yeah,
And the reason I'm not uncomfortable is the reason I stated.
I think given the amount of money that's being asked for design, I mean, somebody commented if it were 350,000 would be looking for the kind of, have they done an RFP? But with this, I'm looking at the answer to the question. This number, 35,000, was provided by speaking with various playground designers and vendors.
Okay, so we have at least more than one. Fine, okay. I'm just trying to just bring that to your attention. That was one kind of potential chink I saw in my review of the answers. Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, FY 2024 is Claxton Field.
Just
Sure.
on responses to the question on page 4 of the follow-up questions, there's a list with bullet points. Explain how this project addresses the recreation factors for consideration in the 2014 CPA plan. And they say, among other things, encourages regional bike trails throughout Needham, enhances resources for walking, hiking, cross-country skiing, bicycling, boating, and fishing, increases recreation use of the Charles River.
Those were included in our draft questions that we sent out. Those were part of what we sent to them, and then they just responded after that.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's part of the hazard of just having a request. From CJ.
I mean, I'm making sure that it seems like these bullet points are irrelevant to this.
Yeah.
And but they also in the same more specific in their response too about the particular project. So
Okay. All right, so Claxton Field, why don't we have our staff person address this?
I believe Park and Rec Commission is discussing it further on Monday at their meeting. But the intent is not to move forward at this time until possibly the fall, as we previously discussed. We won't have any answer, like the town won't have any answers regarding the testing or plan to move forward by March 1st.
did you say that it could possibly come up in the fall?
So that would be,
That would be
our-
unusual
actually-
for us, but possible. right?
yeah, actually, it's funny when there was a list quickly rattled off to me by Karis Lustig. Times that we approved CPC funding in the fall and projects, but this seems to kind of fit neatly within this is basically there's an urgency involved. If you, Gene, you were not at the joint meeting, but it was pretty clear that these softball fields are really deeply in demand, really highly in demand. And the sooner we can get them back online, the better. Dave, your
Well,
comment?
no, I was just thinking that in that meeting last week, nobody mentioned the Fazio complex. Or at least I can't remember the McLeod field. And that's being converted to a softball field.
So one of the things that happened in our heirs only meeting was there was a discussion of juggling of McLeod and Claxton, which in my mind highlighted the incredible necessity of, because they're working on McLeod and they're taking that offline and they have Claxton here and they can't do them both. They can't do them both. It's possible, it's an impossibility. So they're really juggling the work that they're doing on
Well,
cloud.
they're about to start,
Okay, there you go. You've answered. the
because they're
question.
coming to the Conservation Commission tomorrow night.
So I think what they're thinking is McLeod's going offline. They hope that Claxton won't go offline. They'll get McLeod wrapped and then they can take Claxton offline for a short period of time. Is that what we're just thinking about? Okay, that's something. Okay, and those of us in attendance at the joint meeting saw how urgent it was. Every single question and every single speaker only to address the needs of the use of softball fields. There were no other. Yes.
Mr. Chair, there was one gentleman who spoke about a soccer league. That I was not aware of. It's fascinating.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. There's a sock. They use that Claxton for soccer. Sunday soccer.
MSSL.
Okay, so I think that's probably one of these circumstances where we will probably informally, we have kind of an understanding in terms of our planning that the amount that they're going to request isn't going to change from the amount that's in this present article, which is $1 million. The total cost of the project may change based on the presentation as I saw them and based on constructed this project. It seems highly likely that the project is going to be a $1.8 million project. It's probably going to end up being what they call scenario 2. Okay, so, but they'll get data to confirm that by late March, so they're out of time. They're out of time. We're voting. You know, we're presenting the FinCom on the 8th. We're voting. We're discussing it and voting it. Not the week following, but the weekend following. Okay, that's what it is. Warrant
So we should
closes.
hold any follow-up questions we have.
I wouldn't bother.
You know,
I mean,
there were some
because
significant questions.
the way the matter works procedurally is we really kind of close out our year and then we open it up, right? Isn't that right? Yes, procedurally. So we close out the year and then we open it up again. And so although we kind of move to table, we're with the understanding that they're going to reapply and we're going to take the application and we're going to reconsider. Okay. All right. Let's see. Follow up and due diligence questions. I think we've done that. Updates to CPA plan. Gene McKnight has folded in a package, a version, clean version by Gene McKnight, 1.26.23. It may my comments and edits. I don't know if it does.
Yeah.
Which were okay.
I included every version, so everyone can look at it however they wanted.
Okay.
Figure out the order of the version.
Yes, so the
I think item number, what's listed as item number 6, that is with my edits and your comments in the red line is most helpful.
The first one is just a clean version, right?
yeah, the first one is a clean version of the joint Gene and Peter one. The second one is the convoluted version of the Gene and Peter one with all the very clear markouts.
May I just say, it turned out that the clean version actually still contained Gene's comments in it. Maybe they didn't. I couldn't find a clean version, but that's
It's
fine.
probably because it depends on how she typed them. So if she typed them as actual revisions or just added in language in
No, no,
italics,
it was
then
with the red and the
I think it was
revisions.
the
changed.
yellow highlighting.
Well, there was some yellow highlighting there too, but I'm just,
That's all that.
I speak because I've actually looked at the whole version.
Mhm.
And if I may speak, I thought you did a great job. I just think it was really good.
Chair.
It was enjoyable.
Say that.
And I've already sent my comments back to the chair and the staff member earlier this evening here.
Okay, you send them.
Yeah, it was 4 or 5 o'clock or something like that, yeah. So. And Yeah,
so
I
you
got
have
some
your
tweaks.
comments.
All my comments are in. There's just tweaks and minor wordsmithings and a couple typos and various other things. I did it in red lines, so you can have Cecilia see everything there.
Okay, Gene, what I was gonna say as chair is thank you. You did a great job. And
All right, to steal your thunder.
What I wanted to
yeah,
do
correct,
was really bring in what the committee, the housing starting committee worked so hard on, and that is our new housing plan. And to get away from the emphasis on 40B that had been the
Yes.
emphasis of the 2007 housing plan, rightly so, and very useful. But we're beyond that, and we've got new goals, and that's what I wanted to reflect on.
so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the structure of it because so what on the housing, first of all, I think the edit, the edits that you did to the section for this first page, 1 through 12, it's much appreciated. And I take it as a compliment that we only got really light red line. So thank you. And I mean that sincerely.
I know this is
So under
tough,
community, so under the community housing section, where the way we kind of set up the structure is we take these, we actually look at what the priorities are, for lack of a better term, and then you put together the factors for consideration. And I think it is hard, you're trying to kind of merge the community housing, the principles of the community housing, of the housing plan into the CPC. And I guess I understand, I think it's important that the community housing guideline principles are there and the goals, some of which don't really apply to CPA in a way and don't really, kind of don't have much of an application here. But at the same time, I think it kind of is, if I would say this, it kind of informs overall what our thinking is as a town as to what the community housing goals are for the CPA plan. That's how I kind of trying to merge this concept of how you folks, when you put together this other document, you broke it out into guiding principles, priorities, and strategies. And I think I understand why it's here, don't object to it, but I think we need to kind of say, those are things, this is what informs us, and we can use that in a broad sense as a working document for what our community housing goals are with the CPA plan. That's how I was going to try to kind of square that circle.
Principles are very high level ideals, at first I wasn't thinking of putting them in, but then it seemed like that's the way the housing plan was organized. I thought, well, I'll follow the same organization,
So I guess I'd like you to think about that, but just kind of, I don't have an easy answer. I'm trying to square that circle. Because it seems to me that we want it in terms of focusing our thinking. I don't have a problem with using all this effort that this other group did in terms of using it to inform what our goals
May I
are.
ask a question?
Sure.
Has anybody else read the Gene's draft besides the three of us?
It's been around.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Just want to make sure everybody.
Yeah,
had a chance.
don't have any.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
Because
all-
I'm wondering, here's my other question, which is, the goal had been to finalize the draft pretty soon. Is that still the goal?
Yes, I mean, we're close.
Yeah.
We could go potentially, here, think of it this way. We could potentially put this in a final draft. And when I present to the select board, I could bring this along with the 3 warrant articles that we're going to discuss.
Then the third comment I would make is, I think it's better drafted than the other sections because it's a result of a year's worth of work on a lot of very smart people in Karen Sundberg. And just because we had it drafted a different way in the previous 2014 plan, I think I liked it. I thought it was very on point and appropriate to community housing, which is more than just deeply affordable housing. And it reflects what the town wants to do. And, you know, it's been signed off in 600 ways to Sunday by many boards, you know, and the principal boards, so.
I don't, yeah.
You know, I like it.
I don't
I just
disagree.
because we don't have strategy, it made me think we should have strategy sections in the other parts that we, you know, and if we don't sort of accept it as is, that we're sort of out of runway to try to get it approved at the public hearing, which is in only 2 weeks, I guess, 3 weeks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I'll put my hand down.
all right, Rick.
No, that's okay. I was trying to get someone's attention, but I figured I just had to barge in. I've got some concerns. And my concerns center around the fact that Gene did such a wonderful job. I mean, it's really well written. It brings out all the points that we, you know, would hope to be made. The problem is that it makes the other three areas, conservation, open space, park and rec projects, recreation, seem like they're not important. And I don't think that's, I mean, from a, you know, a 50,000 foot level, I'm not sure that's the message we want sent. I think that, you know, you're hearing the clamor from folks for more recreation space, and they want to do different things. And there's a study committee that we've got a member of or a representative on looking at other things. And this just happens to be, and Gene did a wonderful job at putting it in here, but it happens to be hot off the press from a committee that just spent, you know, almost a year's effort in identifying this as an issue. You go to the open space section, you go to the recreation section, you go to the historic section. None of those come anywhere near the analysis and the depth that this section does. And I'm just afraid that while this is very good, it kind of overemphasizes where we want to be. And there's other aspects or other parts of the town who feel just as strongly about their section and their representation. And, you know, I mean, it just depends on when we're there and how we're there. And if you remember, we started this by looking at where we spent the money originally. And we said, okay, yeah, we need some focus on affordable housing because we really haven't spent much there. And we looked at how the money was been allocated over the last 20 years. And so, but there are still needs in these other areas, and it doesn't seem like we place as much emphasis on it in the plan. Now, that's just one person's opinion. Others may feel differently, but I just want to be cautious in that we're not overselling just one aspect of this. That's all.
Okay, well, some of it has to do with the timing
Agreed.
and some of it has to do with the timing. There's park and rec work that's being done and that I anticipate they're going to be done over the next year or so. And I suppose we could emphasize that we would really welcome a much more robust effort by the park and rec community.
You mean the active facilities, I'm not using it with the.
Whatever the committee is, and whether there's the tie and bond survey that actually gets brought to a conclusion. And I mean, I don't know what to do about the fact that I might be in my bonnet. I participated in the tie and bond survey. I went to the public hearing for open space uses, and there was never a final work product. If there had been a final work product, it would have been represented in this plan, right? I mean, I guess I don't know how to respond to the fact that one student made an A effort and whatever factor Francis came up, you know, that we didn't see the effort on the other side. Maybe it's just a matter of timing. I think Park and Rec is going to be prime for coming back to us, and I would urge them to come back to us after they finish with their study committee, and hopefully after Stacy Mulroy completes the tie and bond survey, to pour that data back in here, because as I've said to Park and Rec a couple of times, the data on that they are operating from that's poured into the CPA plan is stale. And if it's not, I'm going to tell you, Rick, Park and Rec section is in my mind going to get shorter, because the introductory paragraphs, which set up the underlying premise for what their needs are is 15 years out of date.
Yeah, Peter, I don't disagree with that. The part of the problem was, though, is they appeared before us talking about needs for playgrounds, and now they've got another study group here. And you look at this, and you know, in response to a question when the Park and Rec chairman was here, he pointed out that they've got millions of dollars worth of work to do over the next 15, 20 years for playgrounds. But I mean, the concept seems to be lost in this document that there'll be requirement to get that type of funding available for that purpose. And I'm just, you know, I mean, we've done a lot with respect to historical restoration. And we just, I mean, I guess, you know, and we still have the whole concept of, you know, open space and what do we do there? I just don't want us to publish something that just because the D student didn't put in their input results in a document that is not that good. I mean, I'm not a professor, but
No,
you know.
I shouldn't have even made that analogy. That it's not fair, because the facts and circumstances don't stack up, and it ended up getting weighted because of the work being done by one particular section.
Right, I understand. You know.
Well, let me just support, as a principal sitting here as the chair of the CPC, what I always say is we need to touch all the bases in order to ensure the continued viability of this program. We need to fund community housing. It's a wonderfully put together act and statute, because it hits very diverse interest groups, but we need to touch all the bases. And if I could give a different spin on Rich, it could be, you know what? The person who has an interest in Park and Rec and open space, and they open this up and they see there's 6 pages devoted to community housing and a page and a half to Park and Rec, they may get the wrong impression. Right? Is that another way of putting it?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And so, go ahead. And so we may be able to fix that just with some additional words.
Yes, additional words, and we only produce a CPA plan every several years, like, I don't know, 5, 7 years. But suppose in the Park Rec section, we acknowledge the ongoing study that's happening right now, and suggest that this section, there's no reason why we can't do a revised plan.
No,
next
they
year.
could come
Yeah.
in next year and say, we want to revise this plan. We can revise it at any time.
Yeah.
If somebody says, we thought about this, and I
But
like
to
that language.
acknowledge the study.
So how about that, Rick? Will that help? I think that'll help. right?
Anything like that's going to help. I mean, I honestly, I marvel at Gene's ability to wordsmith. And I think it helps the product along, regardless of where it is. I just think that without someone paying attention to those other sections, like the suggestion Gene just made, it's going to be viewed as we were biased, and I don't want that to happen either.
Okay, fair enough.
And
Gene, do you
also
think-
another comment I want to make about homework. If we want to make it shorter, I would take out the section on guiding principles.
Okay,
It was an important part of the housing plan, but it doesn't necessarily inform the decisions that the Community Preservation Committee would be making in the future. And that would make it about 1/3 of a page shorter.
okay, that may be a good idea. And
Yeah.
just, you are making a link though to the whole plan, right? To that, you have an active link to the
Yes.
housing plan?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do that. What if we shorten it there? Wait, let me finish. Don't interrupt me, please. And also, what I'd like is if you can we charge you to write the introductory paragraphs for Park and Rec, dealing with the ongoing ongoing outdoor study committee or should we be putting that back on? I mean, we're not getting any drafting done on this. It's either going to be you or me, okay? And it really is. It really is. So if you want me to do it, I will. I'll sit down and I'll work with Stacy Mulroy and I'll get a couple of paragraphs done. Why don't I do that?
Yeah.
I'll do that. I'll do that. You have plenty of things to do.
Trying to back off a little bit.
You have plenty of things to do. I will do that,
You know, we have
okay?
A lot to present at town meeting.
Yep,
this,
yeah, no,
over the
it's
next
fair
few
enough,
months.
Gene, I'm
That's-
sorry, I
Yeah.
apologize for even
no,
asking.
no, that's
I do,
okay.
all right, right, so-
But I'll tweak the housing plan just the way I said,
okay, good.
and make it a little shorter and we'll see how.
And
it
I'll
goes.
make a run at some language that is basically makes it really clear that there's a bit of a placeholder for Park and Rec, okay?
Mhm.
All right, Reg, you have a comment?
Yeah, before, you already made a decision, there's no point, we can comment on.
Say that again.
You already made a decision, so there's no point.
Well, no,
making a
don't, you
comment.
don't, yeah, so,
Well, it sounded like you want to move on to the next agenda.
no, that's not, Reg,
Okay,
I just want to get it.
well, we're summarizing a consensus, and I think the guiding principles are quite good. I think it actually is a good idea to have them in there, because I'd like to see guiding principles in the other two sections as well. I think that if there's going to be, I think the solution of saying we're going to update the plan, when whatever the committee's called, I don't remember the name as well. And we certainly are open to doing that in the other sections, not every 7 years, but right away is a good approach. And I think setting a standard for the others to come up to, you should get this is a good thing. I think we should judge whether the guiding principles should be in there, purely on whether it actually makes it for a better plan. And I think us having not necessarily word for word guiding principles the same way as was done in the other plan, but something that says this is what we're looking for, will make for better applications coming in the future
Okay.
in all areas.
All right, but we've already heard from Jean that she basically said that just know that necessarily, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but there's a counterpoint. We're trying to reach a consensus.
I do think that one person should take the power of the pen from here, if that's
Okay.
another way of looking at it. But I wanted to put my voice into the decision
Okay,
process.
All right.
Okay. And I'm fine with whatever way it comes out. I don't think we should go edit it again. But I just wanted to make the pitch that I think the guiding principles is not a bad idea. Yeah, anything to be short, that's
Yeah,
fine.
thanks.
But I don't think
I want to have some balance, and I think Rick was speaking the balance between the different sections, and I think I can make it shorter without really losing something that's really important.
All right, good.
As far as going forward.
Good, you have the pen.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good points, Reg. I think if the guiding principles are exactly the same and they're repeated from the other plan, and
They
that
are.
plan is
Same
linked,
list.
I can live without them in our document.
Mhm.
If we collectively want to write guiding principles for the plan, our plan as a whole, that's a different issue. I can live with that, but not in that. Especially if it's linked.
Yeah.
okay, Rick, you want to weigh in on that?
No, I'm good with where we're going.
Okay, good. All right,
Real quick, if anybody was curious, once we have a document that we're happy with, I am gonna go in and fix all of the formatting, so please don't worry about any of the formatting. Because it's been pieced together so many times, I think it needs to just kind of start from scratch. Yeah, so I'm gonna take care of that, so if there's weird spacing or font, just leave it and I can
Thank
deal
you
with it,
for
don't waste your
saying
time.
It's not easy.
Just as a word of caution though, for everyone, I would anticipate that once we bring this forward in a public hearing, there's going to be a lot of constituent groups who are going to want to weigh in. And so I wouldn't be so much concerned about the final formatting or wordsmithing, because I'm sure we're going to get comments that are going to have to be addressed.
okay, good. Okay, that's all I have. Any other issues?
Or for the agenda for tonight?
Yes.
Oh, I was gonna, yeah, I thought we were supposed to, last week, review the IGR 1914.
I don't have that on the agenda.
Yeah.
And if you want to.
I thought that was gonna be when Stuart was here.
Ah,
That might have been.
that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Or yes,
Yeah.
and I,
That was close.
My ESP just didn't.
I'm writing the
work in
agenda for
there.
next week, so it's on there for next week.
we had it floating. We were, you know why, Reg? We tried to get
Yeah.
into this night.
So it's the Department of Revenue Information Guideline thing, and Peter, mentioned last week and said everybody should be, using this as a tool maybe here.
And also, I just wanted, I talked to Reg offline about it based on my conversation with Stuart Sagnall, who's the executive director of the Community Preservation Coalition. So I think it's worth it for me to share this with everybody, which is that the IGR, I learned a little bit as a lawyer. I didn't have the time or inclination to look up the difference between CMR and IGR. I'm sure that Gene could tell me.
What's
But
an IGR?
it's an informational guidance, and it's really drafted largely by an individual. And there's a disclaimer in the front, right?
Okay, no, I just didn't understand an acronym.
It explains to local officials the procedures and requirements for establishing a special fund that may be appropriated and spent for certain open space, historic resource and affordable housing purposes. This, I believe, actually is a bit of an overstatement. This is real. It's really something that doesn't rise nearly to the level of CMR. It's not reviewed. There are comment periods. It's essentially the drafting of one individual who's, it's the opinion essentially of the Department of Revenue. Now, problem is the Department of Revenue is the only agency that's ultimately responsible for CPC. But community preservation funds. So, but this IGR was drafted and published in December of 2019. We believe really largely by one individual who's no longer with DOR. And there is a pretty active dispute on some of the opinions expressed, the guidance expressed in this IGR between there's a dispute, or at least by the Community Preservation Coalition, with some of the positions that this IGR takes. For example, the very narrow interpretation of the use of funds to support community housing. It is a very, very, very narrow.
Preservation issue.
On preservation, on support. Because remember, under support of community housing, which it can be read pretty broadly, it can be read narrowly. It is read as narrowly as it can be in this IGR. But we're, in my mind, we're kind of stuck with it. But the solution is to urge DOR, we have a new administration, we have new general counsel, to take another look at the act and to issue an updated IGR.
Is anybody enforcing this?
And well, I mean,
The answer is no.
I think, the only reported case is the Acton case. And I don't know. I actually don't know what the enforcement actions are that have been taken by DOR. It's a great question. Will you write that down and reserve that for Stuart when he comes here on March 1? I'd like to, the question, it's a great question, because as near as we can tell, I can only tell you about one case, right? It went up to the SJC where they said, no, you.
Fuzzy edges on everything too.
And for example, support for community housing, which includes funding for community housing specialists routinely, and is still in a concept that's endorsed by the Community Preservation Coalition on their website, is basically, it's stated through this IGR that you can't use it for that purpose. You have to, whatever support must mean basically a direct subsidy, a direct benefit. So years ago, we used CPC money when we're developing high-rise homes, to bring down median income requirements from 100% to say 75%. So we got a direct, so that directly decreased the cost of community of housing to the recipient.
It seems.
That falls in our support, right?
Yeah.
Perfect. But that's a very, very, That's a very, very narrow use of those funds. In my
But
mind,
how about, Karen Sunderberg, make sure things are properly done and is paying her salaries so that,
under this IGR, our town council relied on the IGR and said, I don't think that you can do that. And so I guess I should say, I was informally consulted on that and said, I've read the IGR. This is DOR, this is the enforcement agency. I don't know what else to tell you. That's how I read it as well. That's so, I think that that's a problem. Stuart has told me that there are towns that are ignoring it, but I'm not going to advise us to do that.
We should probably table the conversation for next week because it's not on the agenda.
Oh,
We're
okay,
tiptoeing
sorry.
a little in the weeds for it.
Can I bring it back to the agenda?
It is on next week. It will be on next.
No, I'm going to bring it back to this week's agenda.
and I have things about the two of the
Sorry
projects
about
we've
that.
been
I
discussing.
apologize.
No,
Relate to how, things we can spend money on and things we can't, and I'd like to ask a question about that.
All right, so that may be for next week too, but all right, go
So
ahead.
I'll bring it back to this agenda because it's all in this email didn't get out till late, so nobody's seen it here. The one I sent to you and Cecilia.
I haven't seen it either.
No, I sent it out. You didn't see it. Here, you can have it. I didn't send it to anybody else. But I sent it out at 4:02 PM. So where it's relevant to this agenda, first of all, I think it's an excellent idea to bring these questions up with Stuart next week. That's a great thing. Where it is relevant is that when I read through these, the IGR 1914, it suggested several things that should go into the CPA plan document that we were just discussing. And I'll just take a really easy one, which is, I don't think is controversial, but it's not mentioned, which is the idea of having grant agreements with the town after town meeting approves it. I made me realize that in our section, our procedural part of, there's a procedural document. In the procedures document, there isn't a section that says, okay, congratulations, town meeting voted to voted to approve your award. Now here's what happens next. And you have to sign a grant agreement with the town. That's the best practice in this document. You don't get the money up front. You have to submit claims, or this is the town process for doing that. And oh, by the way, the CPC has a semi-annual reporting process that you have to follow, where you're supposed to be sending in reports to us that we discussed earlier this season. So all of a sudden I said, oh, and you'll see this in my document I was sending, I put a thing in, should we add a section on that? That's number one. And there's some other things in here that I won't go into, but I just want to use that as an example. And number two, it reminded me that we have another document that we haven't been looking at for about more than a year, which is the procedures document. We've been using it on a trial basis. And by the way, this is a best practice in there. We've been using that 6-page list of standard questions and so forth for now 2 seasons. And we need to update the procedures document and approve that as well as our permanent way of going, because speaking as an applicant, I think it's pretty well for at least the kind of projects we're putting in here. And it gets everything in a standardized format. So we're, at least the basic questions, standard questions get asked of everybody, the detailed diligence. So,
All right, so I think that,
attached to the email I sent to you and Cecilia, the most recent version of that, which I pulled off of the website, which Laura Dorfman and I had worked on. And I wanted to recommend that we also need to kind of fold that in. We're really going to try to have a public hearing on the 15th and then adopt, an update to the plan, which is long overdue, that we need to focus on the procedures.
okay,
document as well.
so there was, I was thinking that we had, one of the issues is we have a grant agreement. I thought that we informed the applicant of that at some point, but we also had what triggered my thinking on this was that we had the addition, the requirement us with an update. And so we,
But it's not in the procedures, yeah.
it's got, it has to be, but I also had an open question about whether or not we should have it in the plan.
No, I'm saying we set the procedures document aside
Okay,
14 months ago.
so you're just saying that the note of the grant agreement and the requirement to do the update should be in the procedures document.
Maybe I happen to put my comment in the plan.
I think that that's the way to go.
Yeah, I don't care which way.
I think that it is.
Yeah.
So because, and that's how, but that's how it goes. That's.
There are
and we could-
references to the procedures document in the plan. And so, those
Yeah.
references would be updated saying,
Yeah.
for this sort of information, go look at this other document.
Okay,
So we have to like sync them up is all I'm trying to say.
All
So
right.
for my clarity purposes, are we trying to,
Brought you a
the
little copy
public
too.
hearing for voting on, for presenting the applications in front of the CPC on March 15th, are we also trying to do the CPA plan at that same public hearing?
That was the idea.
That was the idea.
discussed.
Okay, because I can definitely update the
Ooh, you had a
procedures
point.
document and get it to you guys either the 1st or the 8th, if that is the plan. So I just want to make sure, because if it's gonna go on my immediate to-do list or my later to-do
Well,
list.
Isn't there a 15-day
that's why
notice
she was
period?
dealing with.
I have already sent in a legal notice to start to go next week.
Notice period, the documents to be subject to the public hearing has to be available when.
Not sure if the documents have to be. I know that it needs to be posted.
Well, if it's a plan, I believe the documents have to do it. I don't think the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
moments.
The
That's what you're thinking
applications
about. But if you are updating the official CP, I think that's what we did in 2014, but I don't even remember.
All right. By the way, you are no lawyer, and the anti-aid amendment provision, it's honored more in the breach, and most of
I
the
said
case
that.
law carves out exceptions to it, and it's, okay, so
I'm
it's,
just reading this badly drafted document that apparently we're gonna learn was, shouldn't be out there. from Stuart
okay,
next
so
week.
it's, she was trying to conform it with the Kaplan case, and that's, okay, but that's,
It starts, I am no lawyer,
I know.
so.
I
thank
just
you for
don't want
reminding
people to
me.
be alarmed, okay?
That's why I said I am no lawyer.
As far as how we're allowed to spend this money in the RDR and in the statute itself, with regard to the DeFazio tot lot, it was said when we were on the site even that they wouldn't be seeking money for the surfacing that's needed for the tot lot for safety for the children, because that might be considered an artificial turf.
I don't know if they're relying on an IGR. I don't know if there's something.
No,
did
the
you find
artificial
anything?
turf is in the statute.
I know that, but is
Yeah.
there any further explanation that it also includes any impermeable surface?
Not
I don't-
in that
So
document.
that's not how we've that's
I
not
think
how we've
we're-
done it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I
it's,
didn't look at the
Exactly.
definitions, actually.
Exactly.
Give it back
It
to the
it does not seem to me that. the
I'm not-
artificial turf that's included. I know what they mean is they mean football fields like we have at
Yeah.
Memorial Park.
Right.
But to put a safe surface on a top lot is just part of the process. It seems
I
to
think
me.
we should let them
And-
know
and
that
then-
that's,
Yeah, I think we
Well, it's
should.
coming
And then
next
as
year.
far as, although collection is not an issue right now, I know there was talk about the walkways that would go around and that they would be impervious. They would be, if they were pervious surfaces, which I think they said they would be. And
Right now they have it impervious.
yeah, but there'd be, they'd
We're gonna
enable
shoot
people
that
with
down.
strollers or people in wheelchairs to walk around the edge. What's wrong with that? That's not
Yeah,
artificial
but I mean,
turf.
the conservation commission wouldn't allow
Is
we wouldn't
what?
allow
that. We
that.
wouldn't allow that
Oh,
on impervious
Impervious.
surface. And they don't
no,
know
actually,
that
we
that,
wouldn't allow the impervious. I
Yeah, but it-
misspoke. Pervious surface. We want a pervious.
no, we
surface.
won't. Yeah, pervious,
Yes.
Yeah.
Pervious surface.
like the,
Permanent.
around the reservoir.
Exactly.
And you can put walkers or whatever on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So if they were doing that, then I don't see why it wouldn't be allowed.
In fact, they're gonna redo that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that.
Maybe we should just ignore the IGR.
I wouldn't say that in a public meeting.
I'm
my
just,
friend.
I'm very being.
Yeah,
very-
I mean, you're
I-
tired. I didn't
Yeah.
think you, I heard. you
No,
say
but I
that.
think that we need to honor it.
Yeah, but I mean, every,
I think that we
everything
should
has a-
honor the IGRs. That's for the Department of Revenue is very important to the way we do our business.
So,
everything has a bandwidth.
okay,
And
so,
well,
all right, but I think we've kind of, all right, so do we, in terms of the CPA plan, let's stick with what we do on our CPA plan, and these IGR questions we can reserve for next.
I would just
May one
request
for March.
that somebody take, whoever has the power of the pen, take a look at maybe some of the things that we do agree with that might actually be good in our CPA plan.
From the IGR.
For
Right.
example, the grant report thing,
For
the
example,
grant, you sign a grant report, you have to submit invoices in advance and get reimbursed. And the third one is 6 months reporting requirement to CPC.
and that's for grant recipients.
Hmm.
That is, I mean, the other one is meaning what we've developed internally or what the IGR includes.
No, they actually don't specify.
Okay, that's fine.
But they do specify, have reporting requirements.
Right.
And various other, which I referenced in there. So I just sort of excerpted everything that I thought was relevant to what we were trying to do here.
Okay, let's see, all right, I've been dealing with our first pages 1 through 12 or whatever it is, so I'll deal with that. I can put in. I'm gonna, I'll include some introductory language on Park and Rec. And I've been emailing with Stacy Mulroy about that, so I'll draft it and have her take a look at it. Okay, so that's it for this evening, okay?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, that's done by Rick Simone, second,
I second.
Dave Herr. All right, let's have a roll call. Bob Dermody,
Yes.
Gene McKenna,
Yes.
Rich Foster,
All right.
Rick Simone,
Yes.
and the chair votes.
Good night, Rick.
Good night, Rick. Thanks.
Thank you all. See you next week.